The moment I stepped back into the familiar creak of the front porch, a wave of nostalgia hit me like a slow-burning flame. It had been nearly 2 years since I left for college, 2 years of dorm rooms, late-night study sessions, and freedom that felt both liberating and lonely. Now, standing at the door of my childhood home, everything looked the same, yet carried the weight of time past. The scent of Mum's cinnamon candles lingered faintly in the hallway, though she wasn't home to light them anymore, not this weekend. My parents had planned this trip months ago, a long-awaited anniversary getaway to the mountains. They deserved it, truly. But what I hadn't anticipated was who I'd be sharing the house with in their absence. Ryan, my stepbrother. We hadn't really spoken much since the wedding. A few awkward family dinners, short birthday texts, and the occasional smile across the room. That was about it. He was older by a year, confident in that quiet, unreadable kind of way. While I was away navigating college life, he had stayed back, working, helping around the house, staying out of trouble. Or so I thought. The air felt strangely electric as I dropped my bags in the hallway and heard his voice call out from the living room, deep, calm, like he'd been expecting me. With our parents gone for the weekend, the house stretched quiet and open, a kind of silence that almost asked for things to happen. At that point, I had no idea how much would change over just a few days, and how the space left by our parents' absence would uncover truths neither of us had ever dared to speak. The first evening passed like any typical Home Alone weekend might. After settling in and unpacking, I wandered into the kitchen to find Ryan pulling a pizza box from the oven. Pepperoni, still my favorite. I didn't ask if he remembered. He just smirked and handed me a slice like it was no big deal. We ended up in the living room, plates on our laps, the TV flashing with old sitcom reruns. It was comfortable, but weirdly so, like slipping into a hoodie you hadn't worn in years, but still fit just right. We barely made eye contact at first, each of us preoccupied with our phones and crusts, pretending not to notice how quiet the house really was. "I can't believe Mom still has this ridiculous couch," I said, shifting to find a comfortable spot. Ryan chuckled. "She swears it's vintage. I swear it's possessed." That cracked the surface. The jokes started flowing, memories of broken vases, awkward family game nights, and Dad's terrible attempts at dancing. The years of half-hearted politeness began melting into something easier, something real. By the second night, we'd split the chores like it was second nature. I did the dishes while he dried. We folded laundry together in the den, arguing over the best way to fold fitted sheets. We still don't know. It felt like living with someone who knew your rhythms without ever having studied them. But beneath the laughter and shared nostalgia, there was a tension we didn't talk about. Not uncomfortable exactly, more like a question hanging in the air, waiting for the right moment to be asked. Our conversations grew longer, the silences shorter. There was a way Ryan looked at me now, less like a distant step-sibling and more like someone trying to understand me piece by piece. And I noticed things too, the way he tilted his head when he listened, how he always poured me a second cup of tea without asking. They were small things, easy to dismiss, but hard to ignore when you were alone in a house too big for two. We weren't exactly close. Not yet. But something had shifted. And whether we meant to or not, we were both stepping into that space, slowly, cautiously, where strangers begin to feel like something more. The next morning I found Ryan in the garage, shirt smudged with grease, arms deep inside the hood of his old Honda. The sun had just started to warm the driveway, and he was already focused, sleeves rolled, tools clinking with purpose. "Didn't know you were into this stuff," I said, leaning against the doorway, watching him work with the kind of ease that didn't ask for praise. He glanced up, a streak of oil across his cheek. "Yeah, I'm trying to rebuild the engine. It's slow but kind of therapeutic," I laughed. "Sounds like a nightmare to me." He grinned. "Well, it's cheaper than therapy. And I'm learning a lot. Helps with my engineering courses." That caught me off guard. "Engineering?" He explained, a little shy at first, how he'd finally enrolled part-time at the community college, how he'd been saving up, working late shifts, watching YouTube lectures in the dead of night. There was something in the way he talked about torque and thermal efficiency, a spark I hadn't seen before. It wasn't just about fixing cars. It was about building a life with his own two hands. I listened, really listened. And the more he talked, the more layers seemed to peel away, ones I hadn't even realized were there. Ryan wasn't just the guy Mom married into our lives. He was someone who carried a quiet kind of strength, the kind that didn't need attention to be real. Later that evening, we sat on the back porch, the air heavy with the scent of freshly cut grass and twilight. He asked about my classes, my weird obsession with Victorian novels, and why I always twirled my necklace when I was nervous. It was the first time anyone had noticed that, let alone said it out loud. We talked for hours about life, regret, dreams we barely admitted to ourselves. I began to see Ryan not as a stepbrother, but as someone deeply human, flawed and striving, just like me. That night, as the sky turned to ink and the stars blinked awake, I realized something had shifted again. Not in words, but in the ease of our silences, the weight of our glances. We weren't just reconnecting, we were rediscovering. It happened on the second to last night. The power cut out just after 9 p.m. 1 minute we were watching some cheesy horror movie, and the next, the screen went black, plunging the house into darkness. I heard Ryan laugh softly beside me. "Guess that storm's finally doing its thing," I groaned. Of course it hits when the plot finally got good. He stood up, rummaging around in the kitchen drawers until he found a few candles and that old flashlight Dad insisted on keeping in case of emergencies. The soft glow of candlelight bathed the room in warmth, flickering shadows on the walls and casting a golden hue across Ryan's face. "Want to sit out back?" he asked. "Kinda nice out." The backyard was quiet, lit only by the dim orange spill of the porch light's backup battery and a sliver of moon. We sat wrapped in throw blankets on the steps, sipping warm tea Ryan had heated over the gas stove. The air was still, almost sacred. "What do you think you'd be doing right now if everything had gone differently?" I asked. It was a weird question, but the kind you only ask when you can't see the end of the night or what's coming next. Ryan didn't answer right away. "Honestly, probably still drifting. Before Mom and your dad got together, I didn't really have a plan. I was just existing." I looked over at him. There was no performative sadness, no self-pity, just honesty. And now, I've got direction, purpose, and I don't know. Lately it feels like I'm becoming someone I actually like. I felt something stir in me, admiration maybe, or recognition, because I knew how hard it was to say that and mean it. We talked about everything, our fears, our loneliness, the weird pressure to figure it all out. He told me how he'd always admired my drive, how I made things look effortless even when they weren't. I told him how safe he made me feel, and I hadn't felt safe in a long time. It was the kind of conversation that leaves you full, not just with words, but with something quieter, something real. By the time we went back inside, I couldn't remember the last time I'd felt that close to someone, that seen, that understood. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table, laptop open, but my mind miles away. My graduation was creeping up fast, and with it, the terrifying unknown of what now? I stared blankly at the blinking cursor on a grad school application I hadn't touched in weeks. Ryan slid into the seat across from me, still in his paint-smeared hoodie from the garage. He took one look at my face and didn't need to ask. "You okay?" he asked gently. I sighed, closing the lid. "Not really. Everyone keeps asking me what's next, and I just don't know. I thought I'd have it figured out by now, but nothing feels certain. Nothing feels right." He was quiet for a moment, then leaned forward, elbows on the table. "You don't have to know, not yet. Hell, I still don't. But not knowing doesn't mean you're lost, it means you're searching, and that takes guts." I didn't realize how badly I needed to hear that until the words settled in my chest. He wasn't just being kind, he believed in me in a way that felt solid, unshakable. "You sound like a therapist," I teased, smiling weakly. He grinned. "Only charging emotional hugs." Then, almost as an afterthought, he added, "Hey, you're good with formatting and writing, right? I kind of blew the deadline for one of my projects. If I can resubmit it by tomorrow, there's a chance I won't fail the class." My eyes lit up. Send it over. We've got this. We spent the rest of the day side by side at the dining table, editing his project on energy systems. He explained the techie parts while I cleaned up the language and polished the structure. Somewhere between spreadsheets and citation formatting, something clicked. Not just in the project, but between us. It wasn't about helping each other anymore. It was about trusting each other, knowing when to lean and when to lift. By evening, we hit send on his final draft and high-fived like a couple of kids. But the look we shared after, it was something else entirely. Something warm, anchored, unspoken. We had each other's backs now, not just for the weekend, but in a way that felt deeper. Like maybe whatever came next, neither of us would be facing it alone. It was strange how quickly the warmth between us cooled. The next day, Ryan seemed different, quieter. Not cold exactly, but guarded, like a door had been pulled half shut. He still joined me for coffee, still offered his usual teasing remarks, but something in his voice had flattened, and his eyes no longer lingered when we talked. At first, I told myself I was imagining it. Maybe he was just tired. Maybe the project stress hadn't worn off yet. But the distance grew with every passing hour. He stayed longer in the garage, fiddling with parts that didn't seem broken. He cut conversations short. And when I asked if everything was okay, he gave a tight smile and said, "Yeah, just thinking." That night, as I went to grab a glass of water, I passed by the slightly cracked door of his room. His voice floated through the gap, low and tense. "Yeah, I know. It's just not what I expected. I didn't plan for this. No, it's not that simple." A long pause. "I don't know what to do with it, okay?" The words hit me like a gust of wind. I froze. I didn't hear who he was talking to or what this was, but I didn't need to. The shift between us had a name now: fear. I knocked gently. The silence inside was instant, heavy. "Ryan?" I asked. "Can we talk?" He opened the door slowly, phone gone, expression unreadable. "What's going on?" I asked, trying to keep my voice even. "You've been different." He looked away for a moment, jaw tight. I didn't mean for it to get this deep. My chest tightened. "What did?" "This," he said, gesturing between us. "Us. The way we've been talking, connecting. I didn't expect to feel so close, and now I'm scared I'll mess it up. That you'll leave and it'll all mean more to me than it ever did to you." The vulnerability in his voice caught me off guard. Raw, unfiltered. "You haven't messed anything up," I said softly, "but you can't just shut down because it got real. I'm here. I chose to be here." We stood in silence, the weight of unspoken feelings filling the space between us. This wasn't just a step-sibling weekend anymore. It was something far more complicated, far more real. The day our parents were due to return, the house felt too quiet, too full of unsaid things. We hadn't spoken much since the confrontation the night before, just the usual pleasantries, as if we were both pretending that nothing had shifted. But I could feel the weight between us, the unresolved tension in the air like a storm that had yet to break. It was after dinner, as we cleaned up the kitchen, when Ryan finally spoke. "I guess we never really talked about what's been between us all this time," he began, his voice steady but carrying an edge of uncertainty. I stopped washing the dishes and turned to him. "What do you mean?" Before this weekend," he said, putting the dish down with a soft clink. "There was always this emotional distance. I never knew how to cross it. You were always on your own path, and I didn't think we'd ever have this kind of connection." I nodded, understanding exactly what he meant. I'd always seen him as a distant figure, someone I didn't quite understand, but now, after these few days, I saw him so differently. We had been family in name, but we hadn't been family in the ways that matter. "You were right," I admitted. "I never thought we'd get here either, but I guess we just did." He smiled slightly, that familiar, quiet smile. "Yeah, I guess we did." We stood there for a moment, the air between us still heavy but in a different way. Not with confusion or fear, but with something more tender, an appreciation, a quiet pride for the way we had navigated the storm of awkwardness, the sudden closeness, and the unexpected emotional mess we'd created. "I didn't expect to get this close to you," I said softly, not sure if I was admitting it to him or to myself. "But I'm glad I did. You're not just my stepbrother anymore. You're someone I can talk to, someone I trust." Ryan looked at me for a long moment, his eyes flickering with something I couldn't quite place. "Same here. I didn't think we'd ever have this kind of relationship, but now that we do, I don't know how I'll handle going back to just being that guy in the background." The conversation hung there, unfinished, but the unspoken truth between us was clear. We had crossed a line from awkward strangers to something deeper, and now, with the end of this chapter looming, we both felt the weight of the departure. The parents would be back soon. The house would return to its usual rhythm, but everything would feel different now. We had changed. And in that subtle ache of impending separation, there was a promise that we would carry these honest moments with us, no matter how far apart life might push us. The morning of my departure arrived with the kind of weight that made my chest tighten. I had packed my things the night before, and the house was already quieter than it had been all weekend. My parents were due back in a few hours, and though I'd felt a strange sense of relief at their absence, there was something undeniably difficult about leaving him. Ryan had stayed mostly in his room, as he had the day before, retreating into the silence that had taken over between us. We hadn't said much in the last few hours, but the tension was gone now, replaced by something softer, more reflective. I grabbed my bag from the foyer, feeling the familiar weight of it against my shoulder. Just as I reached the door, Ryan stepped out from the hallway, blocking my exit. His eyes, usually so guarded, were open now, searching for something between us. "You don't have to go," he said, his voice quieter than usual, the words hanging in the air. "We can still hang out, talk, whatever. I know things are different now, but you don't have to leave like this." I paused, setting my bag down. The room felt too small now, filled with the quiet ache of everything unsaid, everything that had changed between us. I crossed the distance between us and stopped in front of him, not knowing exactly what I was feeling, only that I needed to say it. "I wish I didn't have to go," I said, my voice catching for a second. "But things are different now. And that's a good thing. I think we both needed to know that." Ryan stepped closer, his face softening, the distance between us closing in a way that made my heart feel lighter. "I know, it's just, I'll miss you. All of this." I didn't know what to say at first, so I just stepped forward and hugged him. It wasn't the awkward, stiff embrace I expected. It was real, full of everything we hadn't said, the kind of hug that spoke of understanding. When we pulled back, I looked him in the eye and said, "I'm proud of you. You've grown so much, Ryan. You're not the guy I thought you were. You're more." His eyes glistened slightly, but he managed a half smile. "You're not so bad yourself. For a sister." I laughed, wiping away a sudden tear. "I'm glad we figured it out. I'll always have your back." "Same here," he whispered. As I left the house, walking toward my car, I looked back one last time. Ryan was standing in the doorway watching me go. I could feel it then, a strengthened bond, one that would endure despite the miles and the changes life would throw at us. We had found each other in the most unexpected of places, and no matter what came next, I knew we'd never lose that connection again.